All right, guys, today's video is a food plot update. I don't know how much time I have, but I hear quite a bit of thunder back in there. So we're going to make a decent length video here, or a short video, depending on how close this storm gets. As you can see, absolute spring explosion. I want to try to do these every year so you can see the progression of the soil. And if you want to, you can always review last year's video and compare what you think you see. There's definitely areas in here that are far from what I want. Now, other areas are absolutely doing fantastic. And part of this is I have got, for the new people, I've got 4 sections that I've worked on in this food plot, kind of pieced it together like a puzzle, and each area has had some form of different soil restoring method put to it. Section 4 is kind of my newer version that has humic acid and different fertilizers applied to it, to a goal of not using fertilizer. Well, this year I haven't put anything in here but boron. That's it. It's all I've used. And you can review those videos as well if you need to. The older group already has seen it. Probably really don't need to rewatch any of that unless you need to go back and find some information you're looking for. But here I didn't have, and this will be another thing you're going to notice. This turnip right here is doing pretty darn good. I'd say 4.5 feet tall or so. You're going to notice that when you do these food plots, your mixes, by the time this spring explosion gets here, the amount that you see physically growing will change and vary every year. Last year, I was actually really fortunate, and I had snow that covered this food plot at the right time when the winds and temperatures really plummeted. It protected a lot of my plants. This time around, I had really nasty cold, and multiple rounds of cold, by the way, with high winds. And that killed off a lot of the turnips or the daikon radishes. Some of the wheats and oats also suffered a bit. And in the previous videos, you saw that yellowing effect I had. And here we have lots of turnips. Kind of weird how the edges are the real place where the turnips seem to have focused or survived the highest amount. So what you would normally see from me is turnips spotty through here, not heavy amounts, just spotty amounts of turnips. And a lot of crimson clover and winter peas sown at a high rate. So here we have, a good amount of crimson right here. Color looks pretty good in them. I'm really excited to see that. That's no fertilizer other than boron, guys. And there was no way in the world this ground would have grown something like this years ago. And it's kind of fun to see the line of development. Hayfield's greening up pretty quick. I've also got a person that will be taking over the hayfield duties this year, so I don't have to worry about taking care of that other than what I normally do for deer. So they're allowed to cut it one time a year, and then it's going to grow up for deer to stay and hide in. But look at how much taller we are right here. That's over here might push a foot in depth, and here we're 3.5 to 4 on a pretty good consistent basis, and it's only getting taller every day. I can see it, that it's just growing really quick, especially with this rain. The storm's moving pretty quick. Here you can see where deer have literally come in here. Rye, once again, rye is I can look at any species I want to in here. But rye has been steadily improving in this plot. I'm pretty sure last year I may have had rye that was nearly 8 feet tall in places. I know it hit at least 7, but there might have been a circumstance or two to where that was really setting at 8 feet, which would have mean a new record in growth. So I'm going to shut this camera down for a few more weeks now. I mean, this is just basically wasted battery. When this is waving around, you know, you get rye that's getting that tall, you're wasting your time. So this camera will be shut down for a while. This rye here is getting really close to 5. It's getting there. I'd say in the next 3 days, you're going to see 5 foot deep rye. It's moving that fast, developing that fast. But there is good crimson in here. And normally this is a really thick carpet of crimson. This year, it is really spotty. So I'm not really too pleased with that, but that's just part of it. Some of the seed may have been bad, or because this bolted out of the ground so quickly, the clover got choked out before it could really develop. Because that was literally the fastest return as far as germination rates in here. So I really like this. This is going to create a tremendous mat, but this year I'm going to do a different approach. And it's mainly to protect some of my new equipment, which I will be getting that here very shortly. And while I'm at it, I'm going to provide a little bit of an update. I literally had my biopsy done today and had a little bit of a scare because the doctor that looked at it thought I had cancer. He swore up and down that that was cancer. Did the biopsy and there was no cancer in it. But I'm not out of the woods, but my situation is in much better shape. Here lately, I feel like my breathing and hoarseness has been doing better. And my blood work is actually showing the thyroid has been slowly improving. So there is the belief that I may have thyroiditis, which is like a virus that has entered my body and settled in the thyroid and really inflamed it and grew those growths on it. So there is a good possibility that if my body can recover from this virus, if that's what it is, those bumps in my thyroid they found will go away and things can return to normal. So it might take up to a year or slightly longer for that to recover. Just depends on how my body responds. But there is much better hope than what I was facing. But, you know, like I said, he told me I'm not out of the woods. It still can turn to cancer, but he has downgraded it to only 3% chance right now. So very good news, and I really appreciate for those of you that have chimed in on the comments. I'm a big believer prayer works, and it definitely worked this time for sure. All right, so let's get down here. I want to talk about section 3. So if you've been watching these videos repeatedly or seeing all these new videos I crank out, you're looking at a different situation this year for section 3. I see somewhat of a soil reversal occurring here. So when the tests come back, that's going to tell me a lot. Now, I want to reiterate a few things here. If my tilling is going to cause this problem, it is something I'm going to have to live with. So what I think is occurring, not only do I think this ground is acidic, but I think the potassium level is starting to drop off. And there are a number of things that can lead to that. And I've done a lot more research in here. And I'll go ahead and tell you that soybean can reduce potassium levels. So I don't want to give up soybean, but I can reduce the amount I plant. That's not a big issue because it can limb out and replace soybean that I have planted. So last year when I planted almost 90 pounds an acre sow rate, I went too high. And I think that has caused my potassium levels to drop off. And to me, there's evidence of that. The size of these seed heads is not nearly as vigorous as what I'm seeing over here. So why is there a difference between section 4 and section 3? Because right now, I'm going to tell you, section 4 is the winner as far as the best growth this year. Isn't that an amazing turnaround? Here I am talking about my horse that's doing better and it's trying to get a horse on me. That's all right. I'll just chug right on through this. So what I believe is happening is that the soybean has been slowly draining away some of my potassium reserves. Now, the other issue that you're going to run into, especially with people that have issues with acidic ground, it's going to take a while to get this balanced. And I'm actually kind of hurting myself by doing a till, okay? If I could go to no-till, I could balance the soil out a lot quicker and maintain it a lot easier. So what I'm probably going to have to do is once this soil test really gives me the true numbers I'm missing, it may take 2 to 3 additional years of liming to balance the soil out to where I don't need it anymore. One of the problems is when you're tilling, you're destroying worms. That's one of the reasons I shallowed up my tiller, to try to keep from killing so many worms. And based on the evidence I've seen in this plot, the worm population has risen. I've been finding a lot more worms, and every time I turn a rock up, I'm seeing worms under there now, where before I was not. So that's an indication that the worm population is rebounding, but is it rebounding fast enough to counter the bad pH? So if I'm getting acidic ground and I'm losing potassium, or potentially I've got soil lock occurring because of acidity. So maybe the potassium is here, and maybe it can't access it because the acidity in the soil is preventing it from getting full access. And now section 3 is still growing very tall, but I don't see the thickness and the deeper green that it used to have in here, and potassium can really help with that green color. So here I also had to deal with ugly soybean matting, which definitely put these ugly gaps in my plot. I tried to reseed, and only smaller sections came up. Here's some really green winter peas down in here. That's green. This one here is poked up through there. So I do have some new growth, but it's not thick enough to fill these voids. And I'm okay with that because I at least understand that the soybean is causing this. If you can understand the situations your food plots are growing in, it can actually save you money, because you might come out here and look at this and go, oh my gosh, my ground is totally self-destructing, when it's really not. It's just the soybean caused a lot of these gaps, and what is growing here looks pretty strong, but I believe it can be a lot stronger than what you're seeing. So areas that had matted beans, we still have dead voids. Seeds couldn't penetrate it. Even reseeding did not penetrate it. So I'm going to save money by not reseeding at this point. It's practically a waste of time. The only benefit that last reseeding gave me was a fresh wave of bacteria that I added back to the soil. So there is crimson. See, that looks really good color-wise to me, even though it can get darker than what you're seeing. I'm not saying that this is optimal. Nowhere near optimal. Eventually, it will get to that point. So over here is one of the things I want you to notice that this, maybe it is important to you, maybe it isn't. All right, we're over here by the groundhog. The groundhog hole that's in here. So right here we go. Why is this rye so robust? Right? It's a lot taller and a lot bigger than a lot of the other rye around Section 3. You know, we're approaching 5 feet. The seed heads look way more vigorous. This groundhog is digging out some really deep soil. That's telling me that there's actually pretty good nutrition down in there. This is all deep soil that he has mounded up. Now you're adding additional loose soil, which is helping these roots a bit, but the fact that this is growing more like what I expect out of here, that tells me that I'm probably getting some form of ground lock. Who knows if my acidity is changing at that deep of a level. I mean, that guy's way down in there. But here, looks like the potassium levels are much higher. So it could be that I have soil lock occurring in places. This is beautiful, right? This is what I expected from Section 3. Very dark green. You know, here we are at the other hole. Right? More mounded up, deep dirt. And of course, rocks to go with it. I can't skip out on my rocks. Love my rocks. But we have high amounts of potassium. Now, this also can be groundhogs defecating here, creating a more fertile soil. That is also a possibility. But I find it interesting that every time I've had groundhog holes, except for the one that's over here, and that's because of the cowpeas crushing my seeds or killing them off, I have very lush growth. So fast that this groundhog literally could not keep up with it. The soil test I'm very interested to see how that turns out. All right, so up here, this is the dog leg of Section 4. And very spotty growth. This is also a matted cowpea issue. So that extra warm spell has really hindered my coverage in my fall and winter blends. So something that happened all the way back in spring, or not spring, I'm sorry, but September, October, November is still affecting the outcome of my food plot. Even down here, matted soybean everywhere, and we have holes. But still, the growth here is so much better than the plot that I used to have growing here. Over there, around the camera post, very thick and very robust cereal rye. That area poked through the cowpeas and blew up. So that's what should be all through here. So I'm kind of letting that slide as a judgment call on this food plot. There's also weeds. It's to be expected. Those will be taken care of once I till this down, because the seeds won't ripen. I see some crimson in there. This is Section 2. Doing really well for the most part. There are some voids and gaps that do need some help. And again, soil test is really going to help me determine that. I'm willing to bet, as far as the major nutrients go, it's probably going to be potassium and maybe some phosphorus. I'm waiting to see if that's going to pan out here or not. Also, the acidity level is probably going to be a little different. But that's looking okay. I've seen a lot stronger looking crimson than this. Even the winter peas are having some issues. Now these are totally different. See how we get really good spotty growth in places and then we taper off. That could be rocks, could be bad soil, combination of both. And the screen wall, which has had no restoring done except for this year, looks really bad. So if you're a screen wall person, this is your warning sign that something probably won't grow well with your screen wall. I see very reduced growth rates until you get across this side over here. That's what I wanted to see in my screen wall. Here, which lines itself up with all this really rocky, bad soil, very barren, poor growth for whatever did grow here. So this screen wall is going to get a good dose of fertilizer based on the soil test that I'm probably going to get, or the results of that test. Section 1. Very mixed results this year. Right here is a super thick load of rock. It is bad soil with that many rocks in it. Now, if you got rid of the rocks, this would look totally different. But the answer, or the truth is, the second wave of seed did much better up here. All this right here is newly sprouted, sown third wave of seed. So good sign that it is coming up. And of course it did have a thick protective mat to allow moisture to hang in here. But it is filling in, and it's just not as fast as I'd like it to be. And you can see here we have flowering winter peas. Those are fine. This end of the plot for section 1 shines once again. And the good news is it's coming out further than what it used to be. So I've added maybe 20 feet of better growth right there this year. So I'm reducing my bad areas, trying to make them better. You know, here, if you've got rye growing like that, you've got some big time potassium problems. Same through here. It's very thin, some really good spotty growth. But before, this place wouldn't even get this tall. I think my very first mix got 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall at the most, and we're already exceeding that. Good amount of crimson in here. Very weak areas of growth. A lot of lost tonnage in here. A lot of lost tonnage. Some of that is plant death from weak soil. Others is where deer really hammered it. But I have a very high crimson outlook in here. That, you know, that type of crimson cover is what I wanted throughout the plot. And it didn't quite happen that way this year. But somehow, this area here did much better. Which goes back to saying how fast that blew up. I mean, look at that. Look at that line of growth change. So evident of how I've done things differently. I haven't used the synthetics down here. Up here has been synthetics and different types of plants. There, I'm using plants that don't really eat up potassium. So that's something to think about for the future. All right, guys. So I think my voice is finally wearing out, and I'm going to cut the video off. I'm sure this has been long enough for you. The island is also looking good. I will give you an update on that. And of course, the fruit trees. I'm going to quickly bring something up. Next year, I'm going to let you all decide which fruit trees you want me to put boron on. So that way you can see for yourself on a different tree besides oak trees and chestnuts. So I will open that up for you all to pick, but it'll be next year. All right, guys, have a good one. You all have a great day.